Thank you, Chair. I can confirm the meeting is now live.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee for the Halifax Regional Municipality. My name is Hugh Millward, and I will be chairing the meeting. And the date is March 20th of 2025. And I've called the meeting to order, so it's just about on time. And well, I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancient and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Now I'll proceed with the roll call. I'll call you by name, and if you can identify yourself, say hello, so that we can have a sound check as well as see you. So, as I said, my name is Hugh Millward. I am chairing the meeting. The vice chairperson is Douglas Wetmore. Douglas?
Present to you. Thank you very much. And just for the recording's sake, unfortunately, the device I'm using tonight doesn't have a proper camera, so I won't be able to have my camera on tonight.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Councillor John Young?
Yes,
Hello,
present.
Thank you, Councillor. Paul Young. Is Paul Young with us? I don't think so. Holly Woodill. Is Holly with us? No. Okay. Not yet anyway. Annika Ropel sends her regrets. So is that, I'm wondering, Simone, what is your role? Are you filling in for Annika?
I believe it's supposed to be Ben Hammer filling in for Annika, but I'm also at the EAC, and my role is a sustainable transportation coordinator. So if he is here, I think he's the one meant to be on the panel. If not, I can still cover because I'm meant to present to ATAC, to this committee in a bit.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth Pugh.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello, Elizabeth. Peter Zimmer.
Here.
Hello, Peter. Nathan Tuck.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, Nathan. Glenn Babcock.
Present.
Hello, Glenn. Milena Casanavicius. Apparently she's not here. I don't have regrets sent though. And Miles McCormick. Also not here. All right. I think several people feel that they've finished their term, so that might be a problem because we don't have members yet, new members on the committee. Okay, also with us, David McIsaac is manager of Active Transportation.
Hey, Hugh, I'm here.
Hello, David. Turim Anders is an Active Transportation planner.
Yeah, hi, Hugh.
Hello, and our legislative assistant today, Simon Ross Siegel.
Good evening, everyone. I'm also having some difficulty with my camera, and so I will be participating by audio only tonight. Sorry, everyone.
Okay, thank you. First order of business then, second order, is approval of the minutes. The draft minutes were circulated for February 13th meeting. Were there any errors or omissions noted? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve those minutes as circulated. Peter, I don't think your sound's on. Okay.
So moved.
Okay, Peter Zimmer, and I need a seconder.
Second.
Thank you. So the motion is that the minutes of February 13th be approved as circulated. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. And anyone opposed, please say nay or raise your hand. No one opposed, so I'll declare the motion carried. And we'll move on to item 3, which is approval of the order of business and approval of any additions or deletions to the order of business. So Simon, were there any additions or deletions from the clerk's office?
Thank you, Chair. The clerk's office has not received any requests for additions or deletions for this meeting tonight.
Thank you. And members of the committee, are there any items to add? Okay, no. So I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Again, we need a mover and a seconder.
I
I
can move
so
that.
moved.
Oh,
Who was that?
I think I beat the person. I so move, Councillor Young.
Okay,
and I, Douglas Wetmore, will second that.
okay, thank you, Douglas. I'll call the question. Those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
I
Aye.
All right. Any opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. No opposition, so I'll declare the motion carried. So the agenda is as circulated. Item 4 is business arising out of the minutes, and there is none, or there are none. Item 5, call for declaration of conflicts of interest. If anyone on the committee feels that you have a conflict of interest regarding the agenda, please declare it now. Okay, no conflict of interest. Item 6 is deferred business, and again, the deferred business actually is the Spryfield Local Activations Update, and Simone Mutabazi is going to present that. Simone.
Apologies there. I believe I'm supposed to be co-presenting with Anne-Marie Curtis of the Spryfield Community Association. Is she in this meeting there, Simon?
Oh, sorry, wrong one.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing her presently. She may have had some difficulty joining.
All right, no problem. I can begin, and if she's not able to make it, then I will just proceed with the presentation myself.
Okay.
All right.
Are you going to share your screen?
I believe I shared my slides in advance. Do you have them present there, Simon?
Here we are. I believe those should be live now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Simone Mutabazi. I am a Sustainable Transportation Coordinator at the Ecology Action Center. I plan to give this presentation with one of the board members of the Spryfield Community Association, but as they are not here, I will just do my best to kind of give you a summary of what this initiative was and kind of the next steps with that project. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay, so to begin, Let's Walk, Roll, and Ride Spryfield was an initiative to promote and celebrate active and sustainable transportation in Spryfield. The initiative was a pilot where various stakeholders interested in active transportation came together to develop and deliver engagements around walking, cycling, rolling, and transit. We actually held this initiative back in October 2023. And so the AAC, alongside the Spryfield Community Association and Halifax Cycling Coalition, Walk and Roll Halifax, Cycling Nova Scotia organized a series of engagements and direct delivery events for the residents of Spryfield. The engagements were hosted over the course of 1 week, throughout which we collected an anonymous public input and concerns via dot maps and feedback boxes. We also hosted various audits, such as walking, cycling audits, also a women's safety assessment, and those would lay the foundation for AT projects and programming in the community. And really, the engagements focus on asking residents about their experiences with active transportation and asked about what infrastructure improvements were needed and what were the biggest barriers and concerns around AT in Spryfield. So then why did we choose Spryfield? Firstly, this community is well primed for high uptake of sustainable transportation alternatives. Anecdotally, we've always heard via our other programming that Spryfield is a community where lots of people walk, cycle, and use transit to get around to the schools, the grocery stores, and other, I guess, activities. However, we don't also have to only rely on anecdotes. For example, we know that the number 9 buses one of the busiest bus routes in the HRM. Additionally to that, Spryfield is also a fast-growing community, and so there's lots of high-density housing and population density, especially along that main transit corridor on Heron Cove. And there are also many local organizations and residents that have a vested interest in improving active and sustainable transportation in the community. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Next slide again. So as you can see in this schedule, we aimed to make it as diverse as possible with this schedule, and we worked really hard to find ways to capture how residents felt about mobility in their community. So as you can see, it's a mixture of various audits, but also direct delivery programming, and then just kind of events where folks could just get together and have conversations. Next slide, please. So as you can see, we hosted kind of various engagement activities. So for example, like the active transportation audits, we hosted audits on cycling and walking, which were conducted by our partners at the Halifax Cycling Coalition and Walk and Roll Halifax. To capture the youth perspective, we conducted a youth mobility audit in partnership with Chubbucto Connections in Spryfield. And then women's safety assessment was also conducted to determine how Spryfield could be made safer for women, gender diverse folks, and to garner feedback on safety and accessibility in the area. Other engagements focused on direct delivery of services, for example, hosting the Pop-Up Bike Hub, which does free bike tune-ups and repairs in partnership with the Vita Living Buildings on the 500 block of Heron Cove. We also partnered with HRM staff to organize the Mayor's Bike Ride that year in Spryfield. Additionally, with Coffee Outside, they hosted an event in Spryfield, which was an awesome opportunity to combine folks gathering to just drink coffee and chat informally about cycling and infrastructure. And then some other engagement activities were kind of focused on kind of getting feedback generally. So we partnered with the Chubbucto Connections and the library to conduct dot mapping exercises and feedback boxes. And so the dot mapping really asked folks to place dots on key destinations, like, places where they would like to access while using active transportation in Spryfield and transit. And then obviously the feedback boxes was to give us just some general kind of feedback on how people were experiencing AT in the community. So then next slide, please. So then after hosting all of these engagements, a report was written to summarize the initiative and all of the findings, and also kind of gather all of the community feedback and to identify low-hanging fruit that could be implemented in the short term to improve walking, cycling, and rolling and transit in the community. So in general, the report found that Spryfield has a lot of potential to be a high uptake AT community, as I mentioned earlier. Also has the potential to be a very walkable community should some infrastructure be improved. The walk-friendly amenities would include continuous sidewalks and clear street signs, also removing tripping hazards that would enhance accessibility. And obviously, a lot of folks via all of these engagements mentioned that the trails were a huge and great asset in the community. So, for example, to enhance walkability, some things that were mentioned in the engagements were adding kind of like boulevards between sidewalks and vehicle lanes, installing sidewalks on well-used paths, and adding more crosswalks, and kind of especially mid-block ones. Lots of folks also mentioned wanting to have pedestrian refuge islands and other things such as more benches, garbage cans, planting trees for shade was another thing that we heard. As for cycling, many people didn't feel safe cycling in Spryfield given the lack of infrastructure. Lots of feedback suggested more cycling lanes, improved connectivity of the cycling network. And then also comments included wanting safer cycling to school routes. Additionally, there were also several comments focused on transit. Spryfield is a community where lots of folks use transit, and with the most popular comments being wanting more frequent and reliable bus services. In terms of like what infrastructure is missing in the communities, several gaps were identified, including an overall lack of connected sidewalks and safe crossings for walking, a disconnected cycling network, and lack of all ages and abilities facilities, and also a need for accessibility to be really prioritized to support active transportation in the community. Next slide, please. As for complementary facilities, the report noted that it was important to have the following to support AT. So that included better lighting, destination parking, trees and shaded spaces, benches and rest areas, and wayfinding to help with navigation, the latter especially around trails. And then obviously some other important considerations for improving accessibility, accessibility and safety included lower speed limits for motor vehicles and maintenance for active transportation facilities year round, but especially in the winter months. And coming off of a winter where we had lots of snow and ice, I think once again, it kind of highlights the importance of the maintenance of these facilities. Next slide, please. So there was an action plan for improved AT and transit in the report. So for one, it noted some long-term, medium, and short-term actions that needed to be undertaken in order to improve the mobility access and experience of Spryfield residents. So for one, in the short-term actions, it was things such as installing more benches, bike racks, and lighting. For medium-term actions, as mentioned previous, was implementing lower speed limits, but then secondly to that was a development of an AT plan for Spryfield. And then the long-term actions call for a collaboration with the municipality to implement safe, connected, and protected infrastructure that supports sustainable mobility for Spryfield residents. Next slide. So we were able to finalize and post this report. It's now available on both the Spryfield Community Association website and also the EAC website. It also includes appendices, documents of all of the various engagements that we did, but we still need to include the Women's Safety Assessment to that. But it is live and available for anybody that would like to read more. And next slide, please. So the next steps that were highlighted in the report and that we have since been able to kind of move forward with was firstly, the report called for the creation of a Spryfield Active Transportation Committee as part of the Spryfield Community Association.
Hi, that's Simone. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. It's Anne-Marie Curtis from Spryfield Community Association. I was supposed to join. Apologies for being late. Just wanted to allow Simone a moment to take a breath. She ended up delivering all the slides by herself. But you're really pleased to be here, and thank you for giving us the time today. Simone, I can just deliver the slide if you like, and you can clue us up. So yes, so we'll kind of take over here now on building upon the good work that Ecology Action Centre and partnerships delivered over the last number of years, and really appreciate their work and collaboration. We gathered together in February and hosted an event that brought parties together, and also engaged the community again to see so that they could hear the results of the report and see how we wanted to move forward. We pitched the idea of launching a subcommittee. We had a large amount of interest from the community. In fact, a lot of people in our community only have access to active transport, so walking to bus stops and so on. And so, that's well known about the Spryfield area, a lot of high degree of ridership and so on. Lots of great assets in the area, but, some of the interconnecting infrastructures, begs to be improved to the extent there's opportunity. So we've launched that, and we have the partnership of Ecology Action Centre to support the work over, let's say, 12 months or so with some collaborative funding to support, the projects of the subcommittee, and can help support things like writing and asking for grants and so on. And so this is part of the local activations program that the Ecology Action Centre runs and offers to a number of communities, and will help us achieve at least some of our short-term goals identified in the report and support the committee into its first period. But we're also very excited to announce that along with Cycle Nova Scotia, and I see some of you on the phone, that Cycle Nova Scotia is also offered to support us, and we've signed a memorandum of understanding with Cycle Nova Scotia to develop a core active transport network plan for Spryfield. And this will identify priorities for active transport connections and develop concept design for a network plan, and just proper to the Spryfield community. The local environs. We've launched this March. We're launching this actually just yesterday. Started the communications on it. We're working towards a first focus group kickoff with the community led by Cycle Nova Scotia. And we expect this will be a partnership with Cycle Nova Scotia and supported by Halifax city planning staff to engage and help liaison and provide support as needed along the way. And we're really excited about this and the energy that Cycle Nova Scotia is bringing, and sort of building upon the good work over the last number of years. So very, very excited for this to continue and see what we can accomplish over the next couple of years.
Awesome. Can we get our next slide, please, there? So essentially this slide is just to highlight all of the incredible organizations and partners we had to make it possible to do this work back in the fall of 2023, but also continued support as we worked with the Spryfield Community Association to launch the AT committee. And missing from this list, but somebody that was really kind of like important in moving a lot of this forward was also the councillor, Patty Cuddle. Is this the last slide? Is there one more slide there, Simon? Yes. So this is the end of our presentation. And if there are any questions, myself and Anne-Marie are happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Simone and Anne-Marie. As usual, I'll call on people in turn on a speaking list. Members can speak for 5 minutes the first time they speak on an agenda item, and then if we go through a second round of questions or comments, it'll be a further 3 minutes. So I'll call on members in turn, starting with Elizabeth Pugh. Elizabeth, questions or comments?
Sorry, my technology is... no, I don't think I have anything. I do have some... I would like to connect with the people on this project sort of on a smaller level at some point, just from getting the provincial connection, but I don't have any comments at this time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Councillor Young. Councillor?
Yeah, sorry.
Sure.
So one inquiry would be the partnership that you had, SCA had with the Ecology Action Centre. So did you guys, because I've seen part of the slide where it mentions that you're just forming the transportation group, or is that right? Or if you just want to comment on that.
Yes. I mean, we had many community members participate in the initiative that was led by Ecology Action Centre and in developing the report. And of course, there was a number of different techniques and methods, and partners took roles and engagements, including the city, to lead to the report that was there. But now we are launching a subcommittee to our Spryfield Community Association, and focused on supporting the work that we've now gotten into agreement with CNS on, but also working with the EAC's support to deliver whatever additional work or immediate project solutions that that the subcommittee wants to solve. So we're really just establishing right now, and we would intend to engage with that subcommittee for about a period of 18 months or plus minus.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Peter Zimmer.
No real comments at this time. Nice presentation. I hope you get the support of new trails and roads. So,
Very good. Okay. Glenn Babcock.
Well, it sounds like I'm going to have to go and visit Spryfield one of these days.
Oh my goodness.
You're on the far side of the city from me. It looks like you put together a really good program last October. I did like your presentation. I've heard about the walkability and bike audit exercises before. I don't think I had noticed or had seen the women's safety evaluation, which I thought was a good one, a good addition to your planning. Beyond that, it just sounds like you're in kind of the same boat as the rest of the city. In all the calls that I've been on here, it seems like everywhere in the city has lots of good bits and pieces for active transportation, lots of good trails, sidewalks that are good sidewalks that aren't connected to anything. And it just seems to me that it's a huge undertaking for all of the local communities and for HRM to try to make some kind of a cohesive network out of those bits and pieces. So I do wish you luck, and I think I can say that you probably have the support of this committee in everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And good points about the bits and pieces.
And Glenn, come out any time and we'll show you around. We have beautiful parks and access to wilderness in Spryfield and a booming population and lots of cars. And sort of a real urgent need to keep a focus on how nature is accessible, even in urban development areas, and allowing the urban population to continue to be able to access the mental health benefits of the outdoors.
Okay, and if you find yourselves on the Eastern Shore, let me know.
Oh, I love that area. I'll be out there someday. Yeah.
Okay. Nathan Tuck, questions or comments?
No questions from me. And the comment is obviously Cycling Nova Scotia is very excited to be partnering with the Spryfield Community Association and with support from HRM and EAC to be working on the Core AT Networks project in the community. Having spent a bit of time in Spryfield myself, cycling through the area, just visiting some of the parks, I think there's a fantastic opportunity to improve the active transportation infrastructure in the area. So I'm sure you'll be hearing a little more from Cycling Nova Scotia and the SCA in regards to the project as it continues.
Very good. Thank you, Nathan. As I don't think Paul Young or Holly Wood join the committee yet today, and presumably they won't be doing so. Douglas Wetmore, questions or comments? Douglas?
Before I go, I think Holly has joined, so I'll let her speak first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Not Holly, yes.
Excellent. I'm familiar with the Spryfield project and the Sackville Mafia, as we refer to it. They've done some excellent work out there, and I'm sure they're going to expand and be quite successful in their endeavors. I'm sorry I missed the first half of the presentation, but I have all my faith in you, and if you have any questions for me, you be sure to call me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Holly. So back to you, Douglas.
And no comments from me at this time. Thank you, Hugh.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I just have a brief comment or question, I guess, which is I'm thinking about the Macintosh Run And I know that's more of a nature trail, but were any of your activities related to Macintosh Run?
The women's safety assessment actually conducted like about a 2-hour walk in Spryfield, and so one of the areas that they walked towards was Macintosh Run. Off the top of my head, some of the things that they mentioned was that there needed to be some better signage and lighting around that trail, especially because it's quite dark and can feel quite unsafe for folks to be seen. But yeah, that's from my recollection. That's how we engaged with that trail during these engagements.
And there's kind of two trails, like they're both in the Macintosh Run area, but one is a bit more of a walking trail and one is a bit more of a biking trail that walkers sometimes use. I don't know which one you're talking about, Hugh, but obviously one's a bit more rocky and adventure oriented and wouldn't have lighting, other than just the interconnect points. But the main trail, I think, is what Simone's talking about, and it's by the Spryfield Lions Rink as one entrance to it.
Okay, yeah, I guess I was only aware of the rougher nature trail.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Which is they're both good, but one's a bit more hiking as opposed to walking. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Does anyone else have any further questions or comments for our presenters? Yes, Peter.
Hi. I guess I'd like to address these to the public sector, David McIsaac and all, to say this sounds like a kind of energy in the community that really deserves special support. I'd like the city to join in and figure out how to move enthusiastically on needed infrastructure improvements so as to indicate to not only Spryfield, but other parts of the city that if they get their act together to this level, they too will get support. I mean, I think you're taking a leadership that I think is very valuable. But if it gets stalled and no sidewalks and nothing happens for bike lanes and, it may end up kind of fading out. And I'd like the city to say, oh, great, we've got partners here who can really help promote it, believe in it, and raise some social capital. So I guess that I'm throwing it back to David. But anybody else who's in the public sector who's on this call, please feel free to join in.
Can I offer a comment or an example? So Spryfield Community Association, I've been involved with them for about 10 years. And one of the initiatives that we started on just before COVID was the issue of the 500 block, which is down the far end of Heron Cove Road, where there's a number of apartment buildings, parks, a high population of young children. It's adjacent to the Macintosh Run trail and the Roaches Pond park. And it was a situation where it's kind of an underprivileged population. And we just saw it as a situation where there wasn't representation from that group or ability of that group, perhaps to bring an initiative forward. And we had connections with the population and people who had experience living in that area. Number of accidents and so on, people waiting for the buses and so on. Lack of sidewalks. So this was an example where we said to the city, we see this on your list over the long term, when we talked to the city about it. It had been on the list for the city for a long term, but what didn't move up the priority list, maybe because there wasn't, public advocacy for it and on a long list of other priorities. And we said to the city, how do we solve this? And the city talked to us about, two options, sort of a quick and dirty one, which is, put some asphalt down and let's make it a little bit safer immediately, versus a longer term, better planned, integrated solution that allowed bike lanes, sidewalks, proper crosswalks, proper halfway points on the road for crossing over, and so on and so on. And what you see if when you come over there, Glenn, someday you will see a much improved area of Heron Cove Road for population and an urban density that desperately needed it, close to schools, close to the rink, and just overall a fabulous response from the city, from one small question from an advocacy group. So it's just an example, and it was just beautiful to see it being done during COVID. It took a number of years, but the city did complete it really well. And so I feel like this initiative will help sort of generate a list of ideas. I'm sure many of the ideas the city would be aware of, but maybe we ourselves as a community haven't been able to advocate and prioritize what the list is. And so I think it really offers the opportunity of providing input to the city on what our most important priorities are year over year, and an ability to work with the city for them to obviously eventually to take over the more detailed planning and prioritization of the work in conjunction with all the city plan for all regions across the city, which I know is an ongoing challenge. So think it's just a great opportunity for us to get a little bit organized with some support of the city, but not really taking so much of their time up front, and with a lot of potential over multiple years into the future to really see an improvement. Sorry, David, if I stole some thunder there.
Okay, thank you. So one last chance now for our presenters. If you want to speak, if you can put your hand up. I see Ben Hammer has his hand up. And go ahead. And David McIsaac. So Ben's hand is down. David, it's you. Oh.
So thanks for that comment. I loved, the sidewalk project on Heron Cove Road there, 500 block, was one that you're right, we knew about. Two, it was when community folks like you, I guess, Chebucto Connections, really sort of started, working with us, that it got elevated. A lot of those, so that was a big project. I think it probably cost about $2 million. And usually we would wait for kind of a bigger road rehabilitation project to come along in order to kind of implement that. But because of kind of the community advocacy, because it was sort of identified in the integrated mobility plan as kind of a signature project, it kind of was able to be implemented as a special project. And I love it. You couldn't deny the need for it. And it's like, I don't know why, like, I know that new owners came in for some of those buildings, but I think it contributed to a change, hopefully, in just the overall atmosphere in that part of Spryfield. I love hearing about it. The other thing I would just say is that one of our AT planners has sort of been assigned to support the next sort of phase of community planning. And so that will help sort of make that connection into like the planning into action. The thing that really helps with action is capacity and money. That's a gap everywhere across the municipality. And just the final comment is, in places like Lucasville, Hubbards, East Preston, Spryfield, Muscat, Albert Harbor, all of the Halifax Regional Trails Association groups, all of that kind of volunteer activity is so important and really valued by staff. And we are always happy to collaborate and work with community groups that are trying to advance AT. So really excited to see this work happening in Spryfield, and look forward to what comes out of the next phase.
Okay, thank you, David. So Ben Hammer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, the Herring Cove Road corridor has been one of HRM's ongoing Complete Streets redesign project to make it more multimodal, safer for cyclists, safer for pedestrians, and more transit-oriented, because that is the artery that connects all of Spryfield together, but also to the rest of the HRM. And while that project, each segment is at a different stage and work is still ongoing, the community-led and community-based preliminary engagement work that's been done through this collaboration between EAC, the Spryfield Community Association, and now CNS as well, has been sort of kickstarting that preliminary design stage on what comes next to build off of that Herring Cove Road corridor. And being able to do a lot of that preliminary engagement through community partnerships is building that capacity and community buy-in at the same time. It's been incredible to see, and I look forward to seeing where it goes from here.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I think we've finished questions and comments, and we'll thank the presenters again. And hopefully in the future, you'll be back to show us more about your planning.
Just
Yes,
want
we
to
look forward
say
to that.
Oh, Peter, you're
thank you to all of you for this. This is very encouraging news, a good model. Everybody, push the city hard. That's what I've got to say, is be the squeaky wheel, be the action, start it going. It's great. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again. So we'll move on with our agenda today then. Item 7 is correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Simon, any correspondence received by the clerk's office?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that there hasn't been any correspondence to circulate for this meeting.
Okay, and we can see you now, Simon.
I've sorted that out now.
Okay, and petitions, any petitions received by the clerk's office?
None received by the clerk's office.
Okay, and there are no presentations, so and no information items were brought forward. So we move on to reports from staff. And item 911 is the Midtown AAA Bikeways update. And Turim Anders, I believe, will be making the presentation.
Yeah, that's correct. I will share my screen here. Great. Does that look okay for everyone?
I think you have it on your presentation display. I think if you drop down your display settings, you can change which monitor will display that as, or turn presentation display off. Yeah, if you unclick use presenter view or change which monitor you want that to show up in, that may help you out there.
Okay. See if this works better. Is that showing up better?
Yes, but now you're showing your other monitor, the one that is not showing your presentation there. So you may that may be easier just to address with your Zoom sharing screen.
Okay.
If you continue to have any trouble, I can share that on your behalf too.
All right, I'll try this one more time. Let's see. How's that?
Perfect.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak here. So yeah, my name is Anders Turim, active transportation planner. And yeah, today I'm presenting the Midtown AAA Bikeways project. So for some context, the Midtown Bikeways project is set sort of like in the geographic center of the Halifax Peninsula. So it includes Bell Road from Sackville Street to Robie, Quinpool Road from Robie to Vernon Street, Vernon Street from Quinpool Road to Pepperell Street, Quingate Place, Windsor Street from the St. Pat's Greenway to Allen Street, Wellsford Street, and then some of the connections through the Halifax Common. I'll note also that these segments connect to several existing bikeways in the city, including the Allen Street Local Street Bikeway, the Windsor Street Painted Bike Lanes, the Vernon Street Local Street Bikeway, and then the protected bike lanes on South Park Street. So the project goal here is to plan bike facilities that are safe, comfortable, and convenient for people of all ages and abilities, hence the AAA part, while also improving the walking and rolling conditions in the area. So for some background, this project began in 2019. We hosted 3 pop-up engagement events with over 200 people participating. Some of the key findings from this were a preference for protected and separated bike facilities and relatively little interest in local street bikeway treatments. So since I took on this project in 2023, we've been integrating our concept development with groups internally within HRM, including transit, forestry, and parks, as well as external groups such as Development Nova Scotia with their hospital expansion plans on Bell Road, as well as abutters on the various segments of the project. Recent developments include developing concepts that show separated and protected bike facilities, increased pedestrian spaces, and simpler and safer street crossings. We also recently completed our stakeholder and public engagement, which included 3 public engagement events, 1 stakeholder meeting, an online interactive map, and an online survey. So the next steps are to complete the What We Heard report, which will summarize the comments and feedback received from public and stakeholder engagement, as well as the online survey and interactive map. We will also be developing more refined concepts based off of what we heard and further analysis and discussions with various groups. We hope that by this summer to provide council with 30% design concepts. So hopefully this will be in June or July of this year. After that, we would complete preliminary and detailed design, and then shoot for the target of construction for some of the segments beginning in 2026. So in the next slides, I'll go through all of the concepts that were proposed to the public and going into some detail on them. I will note that I'm not including the cross sections or measurements for the proposed facilities, but this is all shown on the Shape Your City page, where folks can look at the posters that were presented to the public, as well as the interactive maps, which are still up and show how wide the various facilities are that are being proposed. Lastly, I'll note that in the drawings, you'll see green and orange. So the orange refers to sidewalk and the green are bike facilities. So for Quingate Place, we have 3 concepts shown. The one shown here is separated and protected one-way bike lanes that are 1.8 meters wide, a sidewalk on the west side, and parallel parking on the east side. The second concept is similar, just the difference being there's no proposed parallel parking on the east side, and instead it's a sidewalk there. The third concept is a protected and separated bidirectional bike lane, which would be 3.6 meters wide. I will note also that the 3 concepts have different treatments where Quingate Place meets the St. Pat's Greenway. So here it's just kind of a seamless bidirectional bike lane that turns into the Greenway. Here it separates for the one-way bike lanes, and then for the first concept we had the roundabout option. Moving on to the second segment, we have 2 concepts shown or proposed. So this concept shown are one-way protected separated bike lanes on either side of the street, which are 1.8 meters wide. This concept also requires the removal of 6 existing trees on the segment of road. The second concept is a bidirectional bike lane, which again is 3.6 meters wide. Moving on to Windsor Street. Unfortunately, there was not enough right-of-way to propose separated and protected bike lanes on the segment of road at this time. So what is proposed right now are maintained painted bike lanes, which are roughly 1.2 meters in width. 2 new crossings. So there is a new crossing at the St. Pat's Greenway to Cogswell Park down here. and then a new AT crossing at Wellsford Street. We also have shown increased pedestrian space at the corner of Cogswell Park, where it meets Wellsford Street and Windsor. Moving on to Wellsford Street. So we have one concept shown here, which are protected, separated bidirectional bike lanes on the north side of the street. As well, we have closed the crossing at Parker Street, so it's narrowed quite a bit, giving more space over to pedestrians. Moving on to Quinpool Road, we have two concepts. So this first one here are protected, separated one-way bike lanes that are 1.8 meters in width. A couple of key details here. One, we've maintained the bus stops on either side of the street. The treatment that's shown here is that the bike lanes would kind of go around the bus pad. Some ways we're thinking about treating this to make sure it's safe for transit users, pedestrians, and cyclists are to, one, narrow the bike lanes a little bit, so maybe going from 1.8 meters down to 1.5 meters, as well as changing the pavement material, perhaps to a stone instead of just asphalt, just kind of to indicate that if you're biking through here, that it's sort of a shared space, and to be slow, to be cautious, kind of just generally on your best behavior if you're on a bike. Other changes include removing the turning lane from Quinpool onto Vernon Street. So this helps with a couple of different things. So one, it gives us a little bit more space to work with and lets us add bike facilities while not requiring property acquisition on either side of the street. It also reduces traffic. We're thinking on Vernon Street, which helps with the goals of that as a local street bikeway in making it more safe, comfortable, convenient for AT users. We've also removed the slip lane coming up, or coming down, I guess, from Roby to Quinpool. So currently there's a slip lane that goes right around here on that top left corner of the Willow Tree intersection. But we've increased the pedestrian space and kind of closed off that corner a bit. We've done a similar thing on the southwest corner as well, kind of increasing the pedestrian space and making it more comfortable for AT users. So the second concept for Quinpool Road shows many of the same features that I just discussed, but instead of it being a set of one-way bike lanes, instead it's two-way bike lanes on the north side of the street. Moving on to the commons, we have two concepts that are proposed. So this first one is a multi-use path going from Wellsford Street in the west to Nora Bernard Street in the east, and then the pathways that go down to Cogswell, and then from Cogswell down to Bell and Trollope Street. So this first concept is a multi-use path, which would be 4 meters wide, which for reference is about the width of the multi-use path that's along North Park Street. So much wider than what currently exists, but still a multi-use path, so pros and cons to that. I'll note also that this concept shows plazas where the multi-use path would meet various streets. So there's one shown here at Wellsford, another one at Cogswell, and then one at Trollope. And the idea of these is that they'd be similar to the existing plazas, for example, at Nora Bernard and North Park, as well as North Park and Cogswell. So kind of mixing spaces where people biking, people walking, people rolling will have to interact, but in a way where we can kind of ensure that's safer, people are traveling at low speeds, and all of that. So the second concept for the Halifax Common shows separated facilities from Nora Bernard to Wellsford, and then a separated facility from Cogswell to Bell and Trollope. These would be 3 meters wide each, with a 2-meter buffer in between the cycling and pedestrian facilities. There's not enough space for separated facilities between Cogswell and this east-west connection up here. We've done a couple of site visits, met with Parks, and because of the oval and trees and some slope issues, being able to accommodate separated facilities was just found to be very challenging. Moving on to Bell Road North. So this is Bell Road from Roby down to Summer Street. We have one concept that's being proposed, which are protected, separated, one-way bike lanes. We've been meeting recently with the hospital, trying to ensure that whatever we propose kind of aligns with their plans for the hospital expansion. And there's been some kind of change of plans that have had to happen on our side just to make sure everything aligns. But this concept fits in with the space that we have. I guess some key details about it. We maintain the bus stop and bus lay-by. They're kind of mid-block here. A challenge has been kind of similar to Quinpool Road in just how we treat the bike lane and transit, kind of combining at these spots. Similar to like how I was describing for Quinpool Road, the bike lane here would narrow a little bit. We're thinking similarly of having a different pavement type and just a way to kind of make it safer, more comfortable for transit users here. I will note also that we've removed the slip lane at Summer Street. Instead, replaced that with a turning lane here, but increased the pedestrian space at that corner. Moving on to the last concept, we have Bell Road South. So this is Bell Road from Summer Street down to Sackville. So again, we have one facility type being proposed, protected, separated, one-way bike lanes. Here, I believe it's 1.5 meter proposed on the north side of the street, and then 1.8 meters on the south side of the street. Zooming into the intersection of Bell and Ahern, we do have 2 different concepts proposed. So the first one shown here removes the turning lane that's on the top left side of this intersection. So right now there's a turning lane to turn onto Ahern, which is a one-way northbound street. And yeah, so this concept removes that and enables the bike lane and sidewalk on the south side of the street to stay parallel to the street. And notably, it does not impact the parking of the Halifax Lancers. The second concept for this intersection maintains the turning lane at Ahern and Bell Road, but consequentially impacts the parking for the Lancers, reducing their parking spots from 13 down to 5. Lastly, we move to the intersection of Bell Road and Sackville Street. So again, we have 2 concepts that are proposed here. This first one shows the protected, separated one-way bike lanes. But here the bike lanes and the sidewalk remain parallel to each other. They're adjacent, which is nice kind of from a directionality perspective. If you're biking, it's just a straight line. A challenge of this, however, is that there are a number of trees as you approach the corner here, which are quite large, quite mature, beautiful, They provide a generous canopy. And by having the sidewalk and bike lane right next to each other would impact those trees. So to address that challenge, we developed a second concept in which the sidewalk moves away from the bike lane and therefore enables those trees to remain. That sidewalk would go onto the land of the what's currently the powerhouse kind of front yard here. But through speaking with various groups, we think this is an attainable concept, and again, preserves those trees, which are quite important in our eyes. I guess the last thing I'll note here is that we've also proposed increased pedestrian space at the corner of Bell Road and Sackville on the, I guess it's the northeast corner. So just providing more space for pedestrians. And one thing we've been thinking about for both corners on the north side of this intersection is opportunities maybe to make it more of a plaza-like place. Maybe there's opportunities for placemaking, adding public art, benches, that sort of thing. It's quite a highly trafficked area for pedestrians and cyclists. So there's a lot of potential, I think, with things that could be done to make it a better kind of transportation corridor, but also just generally a nicer place. So that's it. My contact information is here. We still have the Shape Your City page up, as well as the interactive maps. So feel free to reach out if you have any comments. I know there's a lot of information, so I can go back and forth on the presentation here if needed. So thank you.
Your microphone is muted.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
I'm the one. I'm the one that was muted. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to start with Holly for comments and questions.
My only comments really that it's a lot of work. The bike lanes and shared spaces with pedestrians doesn't always work. That's going to be a lot of education for everyone. If we can start promoting that now somehow, that would be great. But having a sidewalk and a bike lane mixing like that is dangerous. But also, I appreciate you trying to save as many trees. But good work. Other than that, good work.
Okay, thank you. Douglas, you have your hand up. I think you're about to leave. Is that correct?
Yes, if it's okay, if I could cut the line and get some comments in, as I do have to leave shortly here.
Sure.
Just some context. So I work over on Gladstone, and I will cycle home going through Windsor, turning onto the Commons, and then going down Bell Road. So I am extremely familiar with a lot of this infrastructure currently in place and have many thoughts and comments about some of the plans put forward. So I'm just going to scroll through the slides and give my thoughts one by one. Surrounding the Quingate Place option, I really like the concept too, just from my experience there. My main concern about having unidirectional bike lanes is I worry about cars turning right from Quingate Place onto Quinpool. I feel like that could be a potential pain point, and I think by having those bi-directional bike lanes exclusively on the east side would probably mitigate some of that concerns with cars doing right there. So I'm actually a fan of the bi-directional bike lanes in that example. Not too many comments on Vernon Street. Unfortunate to hear that we're unable to fit protected bike lanes on Windsor Street. I'm curious if even something similar to what was done on Bell Road last summer, where there were just the little protective slips put up, I think like the green reflective strips, that would be better than nothing. And I feel like that might be able to fit on some sections of that. Not sure if that was explored, but it'd be great if it could be. Wellsford, the example put forward there seems pretty reasonable. I like it. Hoping that there's going to be a easy way to press the button to cross Roby, right there in the bike lane, similar to what we see on, I believe, Allen near Oxford. I think that would be very convenient for cyclists. Quinpool, my only comment with Quinpool, don't have a strong preference for one or the other, but I know Quinpool Road is eventually going to have a BRT route on it, and I'm curious to know if we're going to be putting in bike lanes and doing infrastructure work there. Has any consideration been put in towards talking with Halifax Transit or any sort of transportation agencies to get bus lanes put in there? Since we're already going to be doing construction, that just seems like a no-brainer to me. Get everything done at the same time. So would love to see that happen side by side rather than do a big infrastructure project at once and then have to go back a few years later and do another big infrastructure project. It'd be nice to see those two merged. The Commons, up until recently, I would have been fine with a multi-use pathway. However, going through there daily, I've been running into more and more conflicts with pedestrians. I've gotten yelled at a few times for rolling down the Commons pathways, despite the fact that it is a multi-use pathway. So I think we are going to want to see the separated bikeway and walkway infrastructure. I think that's just going to be better for the long term. I'm not fully convinced that it's impossible to get a separated bikeway and walkway along that one stretch between kind of the center of the Commons and up to what's the road called?
Cogswell.
Cogswell. Yep. Thank you. Not fully convinced that that can't be done and would like to see a few more options explored, even if it meant having less wide pathways there. Related to the Commons, I am a little bit confused as I thought there was a whole Commons overhaul master plan that's slowly being worked on. And I was wondering if this would integrate with that. Don't need an answer right now, as I'm sure you've probably thought of that or have an answer lined up there somewhere. Surrounding Bell Road, I don't have too many concerns there. Again, only thing to note would be, again, if we're going to have a BRT route going through, or Bell Road North specifically, if we are going to have a BRT route running through there in the future, would like to see Halifax Transit involved and seeing if we can get some infrastructure towards bus lanes there as well, especially considering that seems to be a bit of a pinch point in traffic at rush hour lately. Bell South, I don't have too many strong thoughts on aside from the southernmost section where there's two options. It looks like both options are going to involve cutting some trees. I notice leading up to the intersection, there are two lanes there, one for straight, one for turning. Has it been explored if we could have just one lane going down there and have both our bike lanes, sidewalk, and saving the trees? I can understand that there's probably some traffic concerns there, but I'm certain we could do some work with the lights at the intersection there to allow for traffic flow even with one lane. I've pretty much reached my 5 minutes, so I will let other people go and I will jump on that Midtown Shape Your City page and add more comments as I'm able to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Douglas. And yes, those are all good comments. So let's move on to Holly Woodall. Oh, sorry, we did Holly, didn't we? Councillor John Young. Councillor Young. is not available right now. Elizabeth Pugh.
No, I'm available.
Okay.
I was just returning the call. That's all. Sorry, my apologies.
Okay.
No, I have nothing to add right now. I'm just listening for the time being.
Okay, thank you. So Elizabeth Pugh.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. An awful lot to digest, so I don't have a lot of comments. I think I will have to go onto the Shape Your City webpage though, just to get into it a little bit more. Two things that did jump out at me though, which I wouldn't mind asking about. One of them is Bell Road and Ahern. My kids used to go to Citadel, and trying to make a left from Bell Road into Ahern can be very challenging. The kids don't pay any attention to what the lights are doing; they just kind of go, and you end up as a driver, kind of going the second you see a gap in pedestrians. And I guess, concerns, and I've heard anecdotally that cycling across there can be a bit challenging. So I'm just curious, it looked to me like you had your bike lane just parallel, as per normal. And I'm just wondering if you had thought at all about taking the bike lane off the road a little bit more there, so that somebody, for example, making a right-hand turn from Bell into Ahern isn't doing a right hook, because there's just so much going on. Like, I don't think people do that on purpose, but it is, as a driver, very challenging to keep a track of all the movements that are going on there. So I've just kind of wondered myself if perhaps taking something away from that, moving the conflict points apart from each other as opposed to having them all at the same place is something that might be doable. Anyway, don't need an answer now. It's just one thing which I have pondered as I've gone through there. The other thing I just wanted to make a comment on is the bike lanes and transit stops. There's an awful lot of conversation and conflict and confusion, I think, about how to do that well. And I'm sure you've looked at it carefully, but if you haven't contacted the gentleman in the City of Montreal, who David can give you the contact information for him, if you haven't already, really, really good at this kind of stuff, and it might be worth touching base with him if you haven't already. I think he's more into the floating bus stops rather than the ones that are more right there, as these ones are, but definitely worth talking to. His name is Bartek. But I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Peter Zimmer.
Hi, I have to speak words that Milena would be speaking to you if she were here. Those bus stops Elizabeth pointed out, they are a real problem when you have a sidewalk that needs to cross a bike lane to get to the loading area for a bus for people who have visual problems. I mean, it is a real. Milena has regaled us with that story a number of times. It's a serious issue of how do they know where to turn to get to the bus boarding place? There's a lot to look at and study very carefully before you just sort of do a squiggle around so the bus can get off the highway. Please bear that in mind. Other than that, it's a lot of detailed juggling. Yeah, I agree. I would love to see Windsor Street with protected, smoothly paved from the vertical curb out to the regular pavement for the bike lanes. You say it's 1.5 or 1.8 meters. Well, there's at least 1.5 feet where you have a sudden drop off the asphalt pavement down to the concrete curb. And that's a hazard for cyclists, and it's not rideable. And it's usually filled with junk. And in snow season, it's always filled completely with snow. And so it's not an accessible bike lane. It's not even a reasonable bike lane for 3 months out of the year. And I know it's not your planning department, but somebody's got to plan for it and think about what do we do to make those bike lanes usable all seasons, all hours, as well as all ages and abilities. It's got to go up to a 5A standard. You have to be able to use it at night. You have to be able to use them in the winter.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Nathan Tuck.
Thank you. just a couple of comments. I mean, the designs look fantastic. Obviously, some really good work's gone into this. I'll just second Elizabeth's comments about Bell Road, the turn onto Ahern Avenue. So having ridden each direction along there myself quite a few times, it is a pretty tricky intersection to navigate, whether you're cycling, turning onto Ahern, or continuing straight. I don't know how exactly it could be addressed, but I've come into conflict with drivers there myself, so it is quite a tricky one. Looking at the design, I don't know if it addresses that directly. And then removing that left turning lane up to Ahern, I assume it's been considered how that would affect school pick up and drop off. I imagine that's a very popular spot for parents to be driving through. So obviously we don't want to, for the sake of bike lanes, to upset school families. Other comments just about the commons. I know it's already come up about the separated bike lanes there. I think if it was a mix of separated bike lanes and multi-use paths, it would just cause more conflict. Yeah, it would be great to see separated bike lanes and footpaths throughout the entire commons as an ideal vision. But I think if they're not consistent throughout, it's just going to breed more conflict, as was discussed before. And then only other comment was just regarding Quinpool Road. I think it was concept 1, removing the slip lanes. It just, that looks fantastic. Again, having ridden from Cogswell and Bell onto Quinpool quite a few times, it is a nasty intersection to navigate. Removing those slip lanes will make a huge difference. So that was great to see. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. And Glenn Babcock.
Not much for me to add, really. On top of all of Douglas's comments, I would echo Holly's comment about trying to save the mature trees on Bell Road South. And Peter, and in her absence, Milena's comments about the transit stops as the visually impaired person here, but not being a white cane user. I'm a little bit less nervous about getting on the bus going across the bike lanes, that more so being nervous about getting off the bus with the bike lanes, because I have been run over by a bike before. I don't really want to do it again. But I can see the challenges in trying to plan for it. So otherwise, I thought it was a very detailed plan, and I don't really have any additional concerns over what's already been stated.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. I'll just add a few comments of my own. In general, I prefer unidirectional bike lanes, protected bike lanes, to bi-directional whenever possible. And again, it's a question of consistency. I think in the long run, it would be great if all of the bike lanes were unidirectional, or for that matter, bi-directional, but it should be consistent as far as possible. The other thing that I think this committee is increasingly concerned with is multi-use pathways which mix bikes and pedestrians. And again, as far as possible, I think we should forget about multi-use pathways, at least in heavily used inner city areas, and we should keep the bikes and the pedestrians separate. And that relates to the plans that were presented for the commons, because again, it would be best to have separated bike lanes right the way through the commons as far as possible, if it is possible. And again, I'll reiterate what Milena Kasnavicius would have said about the bus stops, because that is a real issue, and it's not just for blind or low sight people, because if you're stepping off a bus directly into a bike lane, that could be a real issue. So they need careful treatment, that's for sure. So those are my comments. I see Councillor Young has another comment.
Yes, you mentioned multi-use pathways. They're more preferred in District 14. Just to let you know for future planning. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You're saying they're preferred from your point of view?
Yes, because we don't have the transit like the urban center does. We don't have the bike lanes like the urban center does. The multi-use pathways would work better in District 14 than in downtown.
Yeah.
You just said like it'd be better with them, so I just want to chime in. It's multi-use pathways would be better in District 14. I just want to say that.
Yeah, and in my suburban area, it's the same thing. The multi-use pathway works fine because it's low use. It's not a high volume area. Anyone else have a comment or concern that they want to add? If so, put your hand up, please. And yes, Ben. Oh, Ben, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm unclear on how you're managing the speakers list. I would like to speak, but
sorry. I'm calling on members. I guess are you standing in for Annika? I see. My apologies then. Go ahead. You have comments or concerns? Ben?
One thing I want to note in the engagement materials is that the QR codes on the posters don't go to the social pinpoint link. They go through a third-party URL shortener QR generator. And that intermediary service, expired after the 2-week trial ended, but also is a cybersecurity vulnerability that should have been flagged and addressed. Thankfully, I don't think anything went wrong there, but just want to flag that that is not safe cybersecurity-wise. The site plans that were presented in the public engagement materials did not include the Halifax Commons pool, which has been open the past 2 summers now. It's a recent enough facility and an HRM facility that it should have been possible for your team to get that data from parks to include in your site plan. And while that was not included, the hospital parking access egress that is under provincial jurisdiction and not yet completed, currently under construction, that data was included in the site plan. The site plans updated you've presented today do include the updated satellite imagery with the Commons pool, but don't consider how that pool integrates with the bikeways. And the hospital access egress has been removed. Not Bell Road South. The slide that includes the southern rotary on the Commons, the road lines layer that uses is out of date enough that it is pre-roundabout, and those roundabouts were in place when the project started in 2019. Building off of that roundabout, the connection onwards to the Cogswell Bikeway that's currently under construction, how that comes up the hill to meet these crosstown bikeways isn't included, nor is the Rainy Drive connection that's being formalized onwards to Brunswick. Like if this is the Midtown connector connecting all of these facilities feeding into it, those connections feel like key pieces that are missing. I'd like to flag that the stakeholder engagement meeting was held after the public engagement sessions. I've been attending engagement sessions before those stakeholder meetings were introduced, and find value in having those stakeholder meetings before public engagement as a way to peer review engagement material drafts for completeness and clarity before they go out to the public, to ensure the public has the information they need to understand the design presented and meaningfully provide feedback. I'd like to get confirmation on what constitutes a 30% design, because I've heard from the Africville Connector team that after tendering a 30% alignment design, that turned out not to be a 30% structural design. So there's no consistency in what is defined as a 30% design, and I'd like to see more than just a number percentage assigned to that so that your needs are met and we're not having to put the work back at tender again. I'd also like to flag that loading needs don't seem to have been identified or factored into the design. With all of the Amazon, Instacart, and Uber deliveries, if you don't provide a clearly dedicated space for those deliveries, those drivers will park wherever they can and what little time they have to run between deliveries, because they're not being paid by the hour, they're being paid by the delivery, and every delay is a bump to their income. For Bell Road South, I think it might make sense to remove that left turn lane. Having that left turn cycle makes it harder for pedestrians and cyclists to cross on the north side of that intersection. Removing that left turn lane would allow one vehicular travel lane, which frees up space to not have to cut down trees to separate your bike lane and sidewalk on the south side. And traffic is already at a standstill enough as is. Getting rid of that one turning lane won't back things up any more than it already is. Are there opportunities for bike share stations being considered in the site plan? Because HRM does have a micromobility project in the works, though we haven't quite heard updates on that in a hot minute. And lastly, how might the province's Bill 24 affect project delivery? Because of its wording, if the project does not align with the province's mandate, which has not been publicly released to anyone, including the HRM Council, if this project doesn't align with that mandate, the province is giving itself the ability to reject, alter, or even remove the infrastructure after HRM has constructed it, and stick HRM with the bill for demolishing the infrastructure if the province does not like it. Whew. Sorry, that's a long list, but I hope I kept within my 5 minutes.
And that's quite a long list, and probably we don't have time for Anders to respond to all of that right now. But is there a quick response, Anders?
Yeah, I can respond to some of that. So I guess like the key thing I guess that was asked was about the 30% design requirements. So we do have a checklist for what that entails. I don't have the exact specifics in front of me right now, but it's a document that we follow and that our consultant is following. So it is I can't speak to previous projects and what was completed and what was not, but again, yeah, we have a checklist that we're following, and everything that's asked in that 30% design will be completed. I guess other things, so the turning lane at Bell South at Sackville was asked by a few other people. So we did have a traffic analysis done to look at what the impacts of that would be, and it was kind of outside of this, what is considered acceptable for traffic impacts for this type of project. And given that we do have an option for protected, separated bike facilities that don't require that, we're not pursuing that lane removal.
Are you able to post that traffic assessment on the project site for transparency's sake?
That might be a question more for David. I'm not sure, but I guess so. Other things were like the stakeholder engagement session. So we did have that scheduled for before public engagement, but it lined up with a snowstorm that day. And
it was raining. I found out when I arrived at the venue a half hour beforehand and walked home in the rain. It was attendable.
Okay, well, we were receiving emails saying people were not comfortable coming to the library that day. So I'm sorry you showed up. I sent an email for that. But anyways, we'll try to be better kind of prepared about weather and other events. But yeah, so, and then, yeah, other stuff that you brought up, like the hospital plans, the imagery, the QR code, have been brought up and we're aware of that. So we've been, working closely with Development Nova Scotia and their plans for the hospital, parks about the commons, and kind of integrating what we do with changes going on there, as well as like Quinpool Road, the BRT plans. So that's a lot of the work that's going on lately. So hopefully that answers some of those questions.
Okay, we're going to have to move on because we do want to hear from David McIsaac. So Nathan, I hope that wasn't too important what you wanted to say, but we
it's
will.
fine.
I don't have a
It's
whole lot, Hugh. Like if you want to, you know, I probably only need 5 minutes. So.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, Nathan did have his hand up, so go ahead, Nathan.
It wasn't significant, so thanks for
Oh.
accommodating. I was only going to second what you said, Hugh, the unidirectional bike lane. So from Cycling Nova Scotia perspective, the preference absolutely for unidirectional bike lanes, not just for consistency's sake, just for usability and accessibility, much better. And then just again about the commons, mixing of multi-use path, the preference for separated bike lanes and footpaths in the commons. I know it's high traffic area. I don't have the sort of statistics in front of me, but I imagine, it typically is a low speed transit through the commons. I imagine even with wider multi-use paths, conflict would be minimal. But anyway, it's just a thought. I think for the same argument you made for unidirectional bike paths, for consistency's sake, within the commons, multi-use paths would work. But yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. So we will move on now then to the active transportation update from David McIsaac, who is manager of active transportation. David, away you go.
Sure. Before I give my report, I just want to give a bit of props to Anders Turum. That's his name. This project is, it's one of the toughest that we've got in terms of like adding new facilities to these very constrained environments, very odd street layouts, trying to do it in conjunction with the Commons Master Plan, with the redevelopment of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital site, with trying to retain the trees, with dealing with the Bengal Lancers and the powerhouse and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of negative comments there, but and maybe they're deserved, but I would say that Anders has really kind of taken this project where it was stalled in a lot of ways and has brought it to solved a lot of problems. And I think there's some good options there. We're always open for, comments and negative feedback, but I'm confident that we're going to get a lot of improvements out of this. So I'll leave it at that. Other stuff to talk about. We did some work and some public engagement and some good feedback from community interest groups on the Graham's Grove project, trying to make better connections between the one side of the Highway 111 and the other side of the Highway 111 in Dartmouth. And that's almost done. We had a really great meeting with Elizabeth and her colleagues at the province last week to try to make some improvements. So I think there's some good stuff coming out of that. So we report to council in the next few months on that. We're going to do one more final round of engagement in Dartmouth East. So this is looking at streets like Woodlawn, Valleyfield, Breeze, Caledonia, some of those arterials in Dartmouth East. And we did public engagement on it about a year and a half ago. Didn't get a lot of, it didn't feel like we really reached people there. So we're going to do one more round with a few updates to that plan. So that'll be probably in late April, May. We're going to do another round of public engagement on the Woodside Shearwater Active Transportation Project starting April 1st. There's going to be an open house at the South Woodside Community Center between 6 and 8 p.m. And we'll have the Shape Your City and all that stuff going in a survey around that time. So story with that project is from that first round of engagement, the option that we got at a 30% level was for a 3-meter wide multi-use pathway on kind of the harbor side of Pleasant and Main Road between the Woodside Ferry Terminal and Shearwater. And we went back and did some more analysis, and we now have an option where we actually shrink like kind of narrow that road and create more space for active transportation, including separating bikes and peds for a lot of it, and a wider multi-use path for the section out. So hoping that folks have a look at that. I think there's a meeting with some community interest groups next week. Probably a few people on this call where we'll talk through those as well. So, and then we will take a report to council probably summerish on that. We have a new bunch of regional bike maps that are close to being ready. So a couple of years ago, we updated the regional center bike map. We've kind of taken that format and are expanding across the municipality. And I think Esprit in our group sent some drafts to some of the community interest groups here. So we're open to high-level feedback. We can't make huge changes at this point, but if folks would like to have a look at those before they come final, we're open to that as well. There will be some engagement on what we're calling the Dunbrack functional plan. It's not the whole length of Dunbrack. It's just really kind of, we have a multi-use pathway that goes from, that's parallel to Dunbrack between the Chain of Lakes Trail and I'm forgetting the name of the street.
Walter Havel.
So, thank you, Elizabeth. So it's not that much further from Walter Havel into the Long Lake Provincial Park and the great network of pathways that they have there. So we're looking at a few options there, and we're not doing in-person engagement, but there will be information on the website and a survey and that sort of thing to get people's views on that. I have a copy here, Councillor Young, of the Rural Active Transportation Area Rate Report. So that is getting pretty close to going through the approval process. So there will be discussion at Regional Council in the next 2 or 3 meetings. I don't know which meeting, on our attempts to get multi-use pathways and sidewalks in more rural communities and the results of our engagement process last year. And we'll see what comes out of that. It was, I'll leave it at that. Just one, I got a list here, but I'll just focus on a few things. A new eco counter was just installed on Almond Street. That bike lane is sort of not quite finished, but people are using it. I think there's a few new things that went in on it last week, and over the next few weeks, we should see sort of that come to completion. And that, I will leave it at that.
Well, what about wayfinding?
Wayfinding, we can, if you would like, Maria quickly was going to do a report, but we knew we didn't have enough time at this meeting to do it. But if you folks would like a presentation, she could come to the next meeting and give you a little update on what's happening with that. Is that, you open to that?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, so quickly on wayfinding, we piloted an approach a few years ago. We did a bit of a survey to see what people thought of that, and we're now working with Upland Planning to kind of expand that across the municipality. So Maria can come and give you a bit more information on our work toward on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So I think we'll just go with who has their hand up, and we'll start with Councillor Young, and then I see Ben as well has his hand up. Councillor.
Thank you. David, I was just wondering, you mentioned the LGS, so Louisville Greenway Society. So where would they be on the priority of that list for this future area rates that's going to Regional Council?
So last winter, we went out to what we called 5 priority rural communities to ask kind of 3 questions. Are you interested in a sidewalk or multi-use pathway kind of in the main street of your community? Are you willing to pay an area rate in order to be eligible for it? and what should the boundary be of who pays that area rate. We heard a lot, and we're going to come back to council, like I said, in the next 2 or 3 meetings. I'm not exactly sure when, and that'll just basically say what we heard. So obviously what we heard from Lucasville will be 1/5 of that story, and we have some proposed next steps for kind of all the communities.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, thank you. Ben, you have your hand up?
Is it all right if I circle back to a question on the crosstown midtown bikeways?
Sorry, say it again.
Is Anders still here?
Oh, yes. Okay, Anders is here, yeah.
Will there be additional public engagement this summer? It's unfortunately not that common to have a site that's that organically active as the Commons, and having that multi-use purpose room attached to the new pool complex is an HRM facility with level boarding access to host such engagements. I know that HRM has been adding planner positions faster than they can fill them because there isn't quite a talent pipeline to support early career professionals in gaining experience. Hiring some summer students to do additional public engagement on the crosstown bikeways while the site is as active as it is during the summer might be a way to provide additional work experience to professionals coming out of undergrad, and a pipeline towards filling some of the planning positions that HRM has had a difficult time finding staff for. So the main question being, will there be additional public engagement on the Midtown bikeways this summer when the site is active? And is it too late to cobble together some summer student positions to support that?
I can speak to that. So in short, no. So our goal is to present to council in June or July of this year.
Why is that the goal?
The reason we have that timeline is to give us enough time for preliminary and detailed design to occur and enable construction of some of these segments in 2026. So to push that back, to push our recommendation to council back, would then make it so that construction of these segments would be pushed back as well. Specifically for the Commons, those are segments that are planned for 2026, and that's kind of through integration with parks and the changes that they're going through. So no more public engagement. We did have 3 events. Again, like the one stakeholder public engagement event, an online survey, and interactive map. But because of timelines, we'll just leave it at that.
Given how much the carryover backlog of AT projects from previous years has been growing, I'm uncertain that this is a project that can be delivered in 2026. And if it is, it will come at the cost of other projects in the backlog being deprioritized. It's reasonable to extend the project for a year. Rushing it back into design after like a 6-year hiatus feels a bit rushed. And taking the time to do it right will mean we'll get like the 20 to 40 year lifespan out of the infrastructure rather than getting stuck with something that doesn't meet our needs for the next generation.
Okay. Well, so you've put your point there, but Ben, I'm just wondering if anyone has more comments for David. Comments or questions? No? Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there then. The date of the next meeting is April 17th. I'm hoping by that time that new committee members will be on board. And that being the case, there probably will be an election for chair and vice chair. But we'll see. Thank you very much, everyone. It's a very useful conversation, and we'll see you next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay, Simon.